Hi all, I have another mega exciting game to show you from the Secret Garden of Rashid Nezhmetdinov. I say the Secret Garden, you may know of the children's book where there's this secret garden which was created out of pain actually, but the Secret Garden of Nezhmetdinov is created out of his playing restrictions, but he kind of was influential in the world of chess because he became second to Mikhail Tal in 1960, and you saw some of the brilliance expressed through the medium of Tal. So he was a major influence on one of the most well-known attacking players of all time. But this game is a great example of the source. This game shows the power of the two bishops and how they can be really aggressive weapons of attack. So his opponent here is Bukhuti Gurgenidze. So Gurgenidze was a Georgian chess grandmaster, multiple times Georgian champion. He played in 8 USSR chess championships, shared first place with Mikhail Tal in the 1969-70 one in Cyrillic, and placed first at Olympic in 1976. He was a trainer to several women grandmasters in the Soviet Union. He was a geologist by profession. He's also his name is attached to the Gurgenidze variation of the Sicilian defense. So that, for those interested, the Gurgenidze, it's a variation with white, where you play like this: bishop b5, g6, castles, bishop g7. It's a full system, rook e1, e5, and here b4. It's an intriguing idea to undermine black's control of d4. And for example, you might have good, very strong compensation here along this diagonal. d6 is particularly vulnerable here. So there's that variation against the Sicilian defense. And also, this is a very nice positional idea, and you might not be aware of the trivia, so we might as well go over it while we're here. This variation is the black side. Here, knight c3 is thought to be inferior to knight d2 because of the Gurgenidze variation with g6. So after knight c3, to play g6 here, it's thought to be, it's a very, very interesting idea. For example, if e5, then you can have the f5 square. Sometimes you can play like this, for example like this, and you have that f5 square. You were prepared to give up the light square bishop, and you get good grip on f5. So that variation has actually made the popularity of knight c3 a bit less, because black can respond with g6. So here knight d2 is considered actually, according to wiki, more accurate, because then on g6 you can play c3 to blunt the bishop, the Gurgenidze bishop. So yeah, Gurgenidze is a pretty famous player here in this game, playing with the white pieces against Näcmetdinov. He was on IM in 1966 and GM, he got GM title in 1970. Alright, let's go. Let's have a look at this game. e4. Näcmetdinov plays e5. Knight f3, knight c6. Classic royal pairs territory. Knight f6. We have queen e2. Slightly rarer than other moves. So queen e2, b5. Now bishop c5, yeah, aggressive. With that dark square bishop here. c3. We have d6. White castles. Castles. Now we have rook d1. White's more interested in expanding in the center than trying to like pin this knight in this particular game. We have queen e7. So preparing for d4 in a way. So h3. Bishop drops back again in anticipation of d4. Things are getting out of the way here. d4 is played. Bishop b7. Now we have d5. And you can see that this bishop is actually quite healthy for the moment, unless it's traded off later. This is quite potentially dangerous diagonal. Knight a5, but this bishop is blunted, and that forms part of black's play to actually try and liberate this b7 bishop now. And he does so with, in this position, not fearing about b4. There's always the c4 square for the knight. Black plays c6. White takes on c6, and we have knight coming back anyway. Knight takes c6. And now this potentially dreaded pin, because this bishop's over here. So is this an annoying pin or what? Well, black simply plays h6 here immediately. And it might be intriguing if bishop h4, there might be some intriguing possibilities like g5 and g4. I mean, it might be justified here. So actually we see white giving up voluntarily the dark square bishop. Queen takes f6. Of course white's weaker on the dark squares. And the f4 square is a classic maneuvering plan. There is a knight to get to f4 here. And it's a dark square as well. And that forms the basis of black's next plan. Get a knight to f4. Kasparov's his favourite place for a knight for attack is at f5 as white or f4 as black. So knight e7, yeah, very logical. Just get a knight into f4. Knight f1. Knight g6. And now this looks like a scary position already, really. Because if the knight's allowed to come to f4, then there's things like knight takes h3. For example, you know, knight g3, knight f4. If the queen moves, we've got things like knight takes h3, check, and we're on f3. So we see a concession move g3. And of course it weakens h3. And actually this is really dangerous already. Black plays queen e6. There's no easy way to defend h3 in this position. If king h2, then there's bishop c8. The bishop just drops back for this battery. And it would be terrible to play g4 here. This looks absolutely terrible. Then you've got things like h5 later, just undermine this pawn chain. So white perhaps is in a difficult position and should, according to engines, play a4. And the idea of this, it seems to be a bit ridiculous, but the idea is trying to swap off one pair of rooks. So if you're on the defensive side of such a thing, yeah, you want to swap off one pair of rooks. Keeping black's rooks on here, both rooks, makes things even more dangerous, just like the bishops. They're working together. Everything's working together here, nearly. So we see knight e3, just giving up that h3 pawn. And it's not nice to have a queen next to your king, obviously. But white's banking on this centre pawn being significant. It gains a tempo on the bishop. The tempo is returned. Bishop c5. We have rook takes g6 here. And you might think this is surprising. But this is already really dangerous, this position. If white plays rook d2, can you see the sort of ideas that black has here? This wasn't played, so rook takes g6 was played to get a pawn at least for the exchange of another centre pawn. But imagine rook d2, what would you play here with black if I give you 5 seconds? The variations are really, really crushing with the bishop pair, this knight and this queen, and this f5 possibility. Oh, okay, it's f5. If we look at this now, for example, knight f5, rook takes f5, opens up the bishop. And here, can you see what black can play? So we've got that bishop opened up. We've got this bishop, of course, opened up. Black to play here has a crushing move. I'll give you 5 seconds. Knight h4. So threatening mate. And if takes, then bishop takes f3, threatening mate on g2 and h1. Yeah, this sort of thing's really, really, really crushing. After f5. If e takes, there is a defensive possibility of bishop b3 check to bishop d5 to bear in mind, which might make sometimes the thing is, I mean, this is very, very scary looking, and it looks as though knight h4 is dangerous here, but it may be the case knight f4 is even stronger with a tempo on the queen. I mean, this is just a disaster for white. If here, then bishop takes e3, and this is just winning like tons of material. For example, like this, it's just winning tons of material. Off the check, bishop takes f3, absolutely crashing through. So f5 is extremely destructive. You get the picture on f5 here. It's just absolutely murderous in conjunction with either knight h4 or knight f4 in these variations. So knight takes f5 or e takes, they both fell miserably. Okay, so white's, yeah, pretty concerned maybe about that. So he plays this rook takes g6. F takes g6. Of course, it opens up the rook, though, on the f file. We've got a coordination point on f2 here with the rook and the bishop. Knight takes e5 is played. Now here, Näcmetdinov played king h7. Let's go with that for a moment. And white now plays rook d1. And now the two rooks and the two bishops work absolutely beautifully, which is why I regard this as a kind of secret garden game. And Näcmetdinov's talents, I think if he was given more opportunities, he could crush. If he's given an active game, according to Yuri Averbach, if he's given an active game, he could destroy everyone, including Mikhail Tal. So Yuri Averbach didn't want to give Näcmetdinov an active game, and apparently had a very good results, against him, and so did other defenders like Horst and Petrosian. So maybe there are some weaknesses in Näcmetdinov's game, but not in this sort of position, not here. Black to play. What does black play in this position? If I give you 5 seconds, starting from now. Rook takes f2. It's really dismantling this f2. It weakens both g3 and e3, creating immediately a potentially dangerous pin on queen takes f2. In the game we see actually king takes f2, but let's have a look at king first. Before we get into king takes, let's look at queen takes. What does black play here? Okay, I hope you found it. Rook f8. And again, defensive possibilities like knight f5, they just fell to rook takes f5 because of this bishop now working on h1. You're mating on h1. And if queen takes, then there's bishop e3. White would have to give up the queen. Is losing everything after that. In fact, it might be even stronger just to take on g3 first, take on f2, then take on e5. So what does white do here? White's busted. You might think queen e1. Hold on, queen e1. Keep hold of g3. What does black play in this position? If I give you 5 seconds here. Rook f1. The power of the pin piece is illusionary here. So queen takes is forced. Bishop takes, winning the queen. And again, we can play queen takes first. Take on f2, then take on e5. Yeah. It's really destructive, this position. Knight f7. We can just take that. And again, we're going to be taking on the e3 next after. So, we have in the game here, we have king takes f2 instead of queen takes. This is a loose piece though on e5, and in fact black doesn't have to checkmate. He plays check, he just takes on g3, then the king apparently escaped a little bit, takes on e5. Remember, white sacrificed the exchange earlier, and now black is a pawn up, and as king is not great. Black's got the bishop here, e4 is weak. This is pretty miserable position, and this doesn't help this next move. Trying to protect e4 doesn't help, but it's a bad position anyway. Knight d5. We see Näcmetdinov playing the check here. And white actually resigns. He resigns. If the king is going miserably back, on king e1, the most decisive move is rook f8. So the ideas include just winning the queen soon with a check and then rook f2. So for example, if white did nothing, we have the check and rook f2. Now if white tries to parry this with, say, rook d3, that doesn't help. Queen g3, rook f2. If white tries to play here bishop d3, I mean the king's stuck in the center, bishop takes d5 here, exploiting the disconnect. bishop e3 threatening things like queen g3. This is just untenable for white, basically. This is just a murderous position for white. So yeah, he didn't really want to test the king go mat to e1. It's just no prospects there. So resigned after queen g5 check. It's a very, very interesting game because it shows actually, you know, quite efficient elegance after the opening. Black just liberated basically both bishops. White, aware of some of the dangers, tried to sack the exchange here, but just went into something really, really horrible. That rook takes f2 is a destructive, highly destructive theme actually in many Näcmetdinov and other attacking players' games. The f2 square is a source of great scrutiny when white castles on the king side. f2 is a way of creating huge problems for king safety. So I hope you enjoyed this game, got something from it. Okay, comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.